Hello everyone, this is Rebecca from Papeterie de Choix, and I'm here with a subscriber request video on my DIY alcohol inks. So I'm just going to do a little bit of explanation and a short demonstration on how I do it, and I have all these bottles with the name of the paint that I put on, and the type of paint that I use are watercolors. Now, sorry for the noise. So these are paints that I found at a thrift store. They were new, but I've obviously used some of them. So all the colors were in this pack except for one. So in these, this is I think this is a 4-ounce bottle, if I'm not mistaken. But these are 2-ounce bottles, and what I put in paint in the bottom of these bottles is a drop about the size of 2 peas, give or take a little. And then I fill the rest up with alcohol, and what I use is I usually use 90%, but I've run out, so I don't have one to show you. But I had a couple of bottles of 70%, and so that's what I used when I made some new coffee ink a couple of nights ago. So I just filled the rest of it up with alcohol, and so what I did was I filled it up part of the way, shook it really well to get the paint dissolved, and then finished filling it up and just set it to the side, put the label on it of the color of paint that it was. Now the paint will settle to the bottom just like this, so every time you use it, you just got to shake it up a little, and then you get the color. See, there's nothing left on the bottom. And so this one is plum. Some of the names I just made up because when you get the little paints, they're not named. So these, all of these paints, with the exception of this one, which is almost out, I made about 2 to 2.5 months ago. And so I did these 2 tests, where I sprayed each color in a row, and then at the bottom here I wrote immediately after mixing. So you can see that the colors are still trying to, they're still not quite dispersed within the alcohol yet, so they're just kind of translucent a little bit. So, but this one, after 5 to 6 hours, you can see the difference, and I did them almost in the same order, so that you can, but look how, like this lemon yellow, look how bright it is compared to when it was first mixed. So after it sets for a little while, it will be more dissolved in the alcohol, and then when you shake it, those particles are very small and will disperse easily when you spray them. So this is one I like to use a lot, this Viridian. It's kind of a translucent teal, kind of teal blue color. It's one of my favorites. And then no, not this one, but the burnt umber. I had this in another bottle and the stopper stopped working, so I just sort of stuck that on there. But the earth brown and the burnt umber is 2 that I use probably the most out of all these. But in the video where I made the giant tags, the Tag Along Tuesday, I used this one and this one. I think I did use this one, but the ones that I actually made the tags was with the dark turquoise, But now this one, it's deceptive because the bottle is blue where these are clear. So so that's how I make alcohol inks. Now I have tried making them with acrylic paint, and you can do it with acrylic paint, and there's no issue with doing it. It comes out exactly the same, or pretty much the same. The main difference with acrylic paints is that they leave a very rough texture on your paper, and I didn't like that, so I kept trying to figure out what to use that would not leave a texture, or at least a rough texture on the paper. So I thought, well, let's try watercolor, because it's water. It's a whole different type of paint. So I tried it. It has very little texture, almost no texture. In fact, when I did the file folder tags, when I had the whole sheet of the file folder, there was just a slight texture, and I just took I have some old dish towels that I got at the thrift store, and all I did was just wipe it, just really, really good, several swipes over, and it like knocked what little bit of texture there was off, and so it was just as smooth as it could be, just like when the paper was new. So I'm happy with that. So watercolor is what I use for alcohol inks. Now I still use acrylics, but I use acrylics on my jelly plates, and so that's how I use them differently. So the other thing, or another way that you can get alcohol ink, is by cutting up, I don't know if you can see those things floating around in there. Those are the ink pipes. I don't know if pipe is the right word, but the inside of permanent markers. And so I found this one. Where did I find this one? I was with my parents, I remember that, but I don't remember where it was. Somewhere in North Carolina. That's all I know to tell you. And I took the black one out and gave it to my husband because I didn't want the black, but I kept the others. I've not used any of these yet, but these are some that I found, I guess, at a thrift store. So this is purple, but looking through the bottle, it looks brown, almost black, but when you take the lid off, you can see what the color is inside. And so these are very concentrated. So if I were to use these, or to bottle them up, I would probably do it like half this and half alcohol. And then this is a green one that I did. This was just more of an experiment, but I haven't actually used these yet. So, and the other thing that I have a ton of is just the little, hopefully that's not glaring, I have a bunch of these paint pads. What are they called? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, the little powder, and a range of colors, all this stuff I found at the thrift store. These are powder, and if you put a little something, a little sharp something down in there, you can pop them up usually. I have not put any powder in the alcohol yet. I know it will dissolve eventually, but I haven't done that as an experiment yet. So far, I have just used the watercolor that comes in the little tubes. Now, as far as the paper that I use, this is just 60-pound cardstock, just plain white. Bought it at Walmart, like, I don't know, 500 sheets I think, and I'm getting down to almost the bottom, but still got several left, and that's what this is, this out of the same paper stack. And what else? Okay, so I think that takes care of the watercolors and the color aspect. Now, this lady also asked me to explain my coffee ink, and while I'm at it, I'll explain my tea ink. When I go to places like TJ Maxx or Ollie's or someplace like that that has these exotic teas that you have never really heard of, or at least I haven't. Now I got this in a big bottle because I made a whole bunch, like it was up to here, and there was no point in bottling up into a small bottle. So this is tea. It's just some black tea, and then I had 2 bags that I had already made tea from that still had a little life left in them. One of them was a matcha, and the other one was rose and hibiscus, or rose hips and hibiscus. So I just threw that in. I have this little glass measuring cup that I make the tea or coffee in. So I filled it up to, I don't know, maybe about a cup, or not a cup, but a half a cup, and let those steep for, 10 minutes or so. Poured, let it cool down and poured it in this bottle, and then put about that much alcohol in it, over what it was, like up to here. So that's how I make the tea, and I usually use the tea when I'm doing like an all-over project. For instance, I did this earlier today. I created this on my Google Drive. You can do all kinds of stuff on Google Drive. You can make all kinds of stuff. So anyway, so this was just some, I wanted some typewriter keys to use in journals, making ephemera. Now these turned out a little bit smaller than I like. I'd rather have something a little bit bigger, but also I'll just redo them. That's not a big deal, but I thought, well, let's dye it and see what it's going to look like. So this, again, is the same paper that I showed you. This is, I sprayed the paper first with the tea and let it have a coat, and then I sprayed it with the coffee ink. Now I used everything that I had bottled up in a spray bottle, but this is what I made it from. Now this is instant Folgers coffee with the red label. That's all this is. And what I made a couple of nights ago was I put 3 heaping teaspoons in this, with about roughly half a teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda takes the acid out. It also is what gives it a little, it's more of a brown instead of the reddish orange color that sometimes you get the cast of on coffee. So so that's the acid part. So baking soda takes the acid out, so whatever you put the coffee on, it will make it last longer. So I put like 3 heaping tablespoons of Folgers, a little bit of baking soda, fill it up with hot water to the 1 cup mark or thereabouts, and then stir it, let it sit and dissolve really well, and then I bottle it in this little juice bottle that my mother gave me. So I poured in about half of what I made, so enough to get to roughly this mark, and then I finished it with alcohol. That's what finished my 90% alcohol, was this bottle. I like 90% better because it evaporates quicker, and that's the whole point of alcohol, is so that it disperses the colorant, whatever it is, whether it's coffee or watercolor or whatever. It disperses it, and then the alcohol evaporates very quickly without getting your paper wet like water would, because water will damage the fibers, and it takes forever for it to dry, whereas alcohol actually strengthens the fibers, the paper fibers, and like let me give you an example. This is going to be a poor example, and I'll have to explain my experiment. This is a regular sheet of copy paper, not heavy cardstock, just plain copy paper. And after I finished this piece, I threw this in the bath. Now, I have been reading up on how to make inks from flower blooms, because I have tons and tons and tons of dried flowers, because I make handmade paper and I put those in my handmade paper. But I make handmade paper in large batches about once every 3 or 4 months. So I've not made any in a while. So, okay, what can I use my dried flowers for? So these petals that you see, I put in a jar, a jelly jar that I washed about so big, and about so big around holds, I don't know, maybe 5 ounces, give or take. And filled it about half full of geranium blooms. That was a really bright fuchsia pink. And almost immediately the alcohol started drawing the color out. So I hadn't had that for about a week. So the paper drew up the remainder of what I had sprayed for this. But I just then dumped this on top. And you can see this really light pink where it's starting to dry. And I was just seeing what it would do. And so where this green top color is where the petals have been sitting. Now, just as a side note, I'll show you what I did with the bottles, or not the bottles, but the next batch to try, because I have more rose blooms than I do anything else. So I bottled these this afternoon, so they've been sitting about 10 hours maybe, and you can already see that there's hardly any color left in the petals. Now I did pack it tight. Let me open it, or let me attempt to open it. Look, this is rose ink. It dripped. It's going to be a really pretty color pink. And unfortunately it smells like alcohol and not like roses, but before I did it they smelled much like roses. But these rose blooms came from my daughter's house. I guess I picked them about 2 years ago. And they were a dark red rose, but they dried like super dark purple. So I got a few of those and put them in to see what they would do, and I'm already liking that. I mean, if you wanted to do a very delicate journal pages, you know, to color and dye your own pages, that would be good. And then I also make stuff with essential oils, so if you do rose colored paper or with rose ink paper, you could put a little essential oil in it, just a touch, or not in it but on it, because the alcohol would kill the essential oil. But anyway, you could do all kinds of stuff with that. But yeah, look at that already. Now it's going to dry lighter, but hey, I'm happy with that. And that's only been, like I said, about 10 hours, maybe a little less. So so that's the coffee and the other inks explained. So, but what I will do is I'm going to put the camera on pause, and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to just do a demonstration of how I would ink a white piece of paper, just a plain piece of paper to do whatever with, and just show you how I do it. And so let me change this around and I'll be right back. Okay, so there might be a little bit of glare around the edges, but hopefully not enough to distract. So what I'm going to do first is use some of this tea to just saturate the page a little bit. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this squirt bottle. In fact, it might have decided to, oh, there it goes. I don't like what it does, and I guess it is getting low enough now that I could bottle it up into the smaller ones. But what this does is get the paper just ready for the other colors and whatnot I'm going to put on it. Okay, so that's enough of that. Yeah, after I get through this, I'm going to bottle it up. Okay, so I bottled up some of that coffee ink into this little squirt bottle, and I actually ordered, I spilled coffee on it, can you see? I ordered, I can't remember, I think it was like 40 or 50 from Amazon. Now, I have been dyeing paper to put in journals for years, or at least several years. And I always, make my coffee water and put it in a bath like this, dip a page in, and lay it to the side, and all such as that. And they rip easy, and, it's just a pain in the butt sometimes. And, so, reach my other little alcohol over here. So when I started this and saw how it did, and I'm going to put some of this dark turquoise in here as well. You can see this, the way it's moving around like this, that's the alcohol in the paint that's giving it that movement. And so it just makes it pretty. And as I said, I know I'm telling two stories at the same time. As I said, now this is just plain 90% alcohol. It's almost to the bottom, but I do that to help disperse it. See what it does when you spray just plain alcohol on top of the alcohol paint. So I'm going to just let that sit for just a minute and let some of that alcohol evaporate. And you can already see around the edges where it's evaporating. So, okay, what was I saying first? I think I lost both my trains of thought. With doing the pages for journals, I've decided I'm not going to do the bath anymore. I am going to make them like this because they turn out so much better. Let me show you. Now, this is just my opinion, but I did these about a month ago, and they're more even than anything that I would make in a bath and laying them out and having to let them dry. I mean, you obviously still have to let this stuff dry, but the alcohol evaporates. It just leaves the color pretty much wherever it's sprayed. Now, what I do is I'm going to flip it over real quick and do a little bit more paint around the edges. The other thing I was going to say was I do enthusiast photography, and I love taking pictures of old rusty vehicles and abandoned houses and buildings and that sort of thing. And so this look right here to me looks like rusty metal, something that's been painted this color and it's starting to rust. And now I'm spraying just the alcohol, and see what that does? And now it'll just evaporate and you'll be left with that pattern. Now, one thing I do though to tone that down, and I know this is going to sound really silly, but I'll demonstrate that as well. I buy these cotton napkins. I'm going to move this to the side. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to love this. I buy these cotton napkins at the thrift store, and I use some of them when I make handmade paper. And then I have a few extras. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this sheet right up here that we've just sprayed. And what I do is I just speed up the process just a little bit by wiping off the excess, like this. And so there's the first side that we did, and there's the second side. And to me, there's enough of the turquoise on there to make that, you know, that's nice just the way it is. But it doesn't have enough coffee. So what I'm going to do is put it back in the little bin, and I'm going to spray just a little bit more coffee on it, on both sides, and just let that build up a little bit. So anyway, yeah, basically what I was saying was I just love the look of this rusted metal. I have a bunch of pictures on Flickr where me and several other people that I've sort of made friends with on there, we're always out looking for rusty metal, especially on old cars. So let me move this to the side again. Put it up here one more time and just slightly pat it just enough to take off the excess. And I'm going to call that done. And I'll let that dry, and I'll probably turn it into a tag or several tags since it's this cardstock paper. But that's pretty much it. And those tags that I did for Tuesday's video was the same process. I just used a file folder that I had ripped in half at the fold point on the bottom, and then did exactly the same thing with different color variations. I still used the coffee and the tea, and then just different colors. And that's what I made those giant tags out of, and in particular the dark turquoise version of the ones I made. So I hope that helps and answers the questions. And thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon.